Reginald Heber was born in Cheshire, England in 1783. He grew up as budding literature and poet with an extraordinary mindset. His father was a minister in an Anglican church. Heber was the second among the three children born to them. Heber was raised in educational privilege. With the inborn talent from above, he started translating a Latin classic into English verse by the time he was 7. At 17, he entered Oxford University, which in turn made him a good friend of the poet Walter Alva Scott. He was a bright youth with a bright future. By the time Heber was 20, he had already penned a poem titled Palestine, which won the prestigious Newdigate Prize. He had won 2 awards for his poetry over there, showing that he was blessed with his talent. And indeed, God had blessed him in his poetry skills marvelously. After his graduation, he became rector of his father's church in the village Hodnet near Shrewsbury in the west of England. After his father's death, he took over as the vicar of the church where his father served faithfully. This was the era where he literally began to write hymns. He wrote over hundreds of hymns as he served as the vicar. He married Amelia Shipley and later on were blessed with 3 daughters. But unfortunately, his eldest daughter died as an infant. It was during this time he penned down the hymn, "Thou art gone to the grave," which has comforted many. Heber was fond of Olney hymns written by Newton and Cooper, and sought to encourage the Anglican hierarchy to utilize more hymns to enhance biblical text presented throughout the church year. He was of an opinion that hymns should be sung in church worship. This was iconoclastic at the time, since hymn singing was prohibited in Church of England liturgies other than the Metrical Psalms. In contrast, the Methodist societies in the 18th century were known for their hymn singing, along with the dissenting churches that had been using the hymns of Isaac Watts for nearly 100 years. Heber was a man who helped to dispel the idea that hymns were associated with Methodists and extreme evangelicals. Unfortunately, he failed to persuade church authorities within the Church of England to grant permission for hymn singing during Sunday services while he was alive, in spite of all the efforts he took, which went on vain. Despite the oppositions he faced, he continued to compose songs and sang it in his church in a way to improve the singing in his little congregation at Hodnet. It was during this time that, for the Trinity Sunday, he composed the hymn, "Holy, Holy, Holy, Lord God Almighty." He stayed there at Hodnet and served the Lord in the church for 16 fruitful years. Later, as he wrote the missionary hymns from Greenland's icy mountains, and brightest and best, he felt the urge of the Lord to go out to India. This was the time when he was promoted by the church to be the Bishop of Calcutta in India in 1823. Calcutta was where he served for the final 3 years of his life. He was filled with a burden for the Indians, that these people should receive the gospel and should be saved. He was also against the atrocities of the East India Company, which was in India at that time. He worked tirelessly to build a training school for local clergy and traveled extensively around India preaching the gospel. He became a strong critic of British East India Company's heavy-handed and bigoted practices. But due to the diverse climate, which was unable to his health, he suffered from a stroke when he was taking a bath after completing his church service, and unfortunately died at the age of 42 in 1826. After his death, his widowed wife came across the hymns he had written and published them. Most of his hymns, though, were not published until he passed away in 1826. His widow published Heber's impressive volume of hymns, which are arranged according to the church year, hymns written and adapted to the weekly church service of the year 1827. This, along with a selection of psalms and hymns for the parish church of Banbury, brought his most eminent hymn into the spotlight. Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty. In 1861, a publisher rediscovered the hymn Holy, Holy, Holy and asked John Bacchus Dykes to furnish it with a tune. John had been a church organist since he was 10 years old and was co-founder and president at the Cambridge University Musical Society. John accepted the words, and by the grace of God, within 30 minutes, he wrote the tune Nicaea. The tune name is a tribute to the First Council of Nicaea, held by the Roman Emperor Constantine I in 325, and also a classic example of a Victorian hymn tune which carried the praise of the Trinity and was first published in Hymns Ancient and Modern in 1861 by William Monk. Ever since then, this beloved jewel of Trinitarian hymnody is found in 1,421 hymnals and dozens of translations. It has been described as one of the rare hymns which appear in just about every hymnal. Reginald Heber. Thank you. Stay tuned. God bless.